Two Popes Through the Lens of A Course in Miracles, ACIM, becomes a profound exploration of guilt, forgiveness, identity, humility, authority, and the shift from certainty to listening. At the center of the film are not really two popes. There are two thought systems, one rooted in control, preservation, certainty, structure, the other moving toward openness, relationship, humility, and living contact. Yet the movie wisely refuses simplistic division. Neither man is purely ego. Neither man is purely healed. That honesty matters. It is not interested in creating spiritual heroes and villains. It is interested in exposing the dynamics of the split mind. Pope Benedict represents the mind attempting to preserve order through doctrine and certainty. He carries enormous burden, responsibility, and hidden guilt. Pope Francis represents movement, listening, humanity, and pastoral connection, but also regret, compromise, and unresolved pain from his past. The miracle is not that one is right and one wrong. The miracle is that they begin truly listening to each other. That alone is rare in the ego's world. The ego debates to win. Spirit listens to join. Much of the film quietly revolves around confession, not merely religious confession, psychological confession. Both men slowly reveal the hidden self-images they carry: failure, complicity, disappointment, fear, unworthiness. Teaches that the ego survives through concealment. What is brought to light can be healed. What is defended remains imprisoned. One of the deepest themes in the film is the exhaustion of maintaining identity. Benedict especially appears crushed beneath the role. Not just pope, but symbol, authority, guardian, projection screen for billions. In ACIM, all roles eventually become burdens when mistaken for identity. The Course says, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. Benedict spent much of his life attempting to preserve the institution externally, yet inwardly he appears increasingly aware that external control cannot heal the human condition. That realization creates humility, painful humility, not performative humility, real humility, the kind that emerges when certainty collapses. Francis, meanwhile, embodies another ACIM theme: relationship over abstraction. He moves toward people, toward touch, conversation, shared meals, ordinary humanity. This does not make him spiritually superior, but it reflects the Course's movement away from rigid conceptual identity and toward living presence. One beautiful thread in the film is how often connection happens through ordinary moments: sharing pizza, watching soccer, walking gardens, music, silence. Not theological debate. That feels deeply aligned with ACIM's emphasis that love is recognized through presence rather than intellectual mastery. The flashbacks involving Argentina are crucial because they expose spiritual complexity. Francis carries guilt regarding choices made during political violence and oppression. The film refuses easy innocence. That matters deeply. Sometimes spirituality tries to bypass moral ambiguity with simplistic purity narratives. I was always aligned. I only acted from love. But human psychology is often messier. Fear influences perception. Institutions distort clarity. Self-preservation disguises itself as wisdom. Frem would frame this not as sin in the egoic condemning sense, but as confusion arising from identification with fear. And confusion can be healed through honesty, not self-hatred. That distinction is essential. The movie repeatedly points toward one of the Course's deepest teachings. Forgiveness is not excusing behavior. It is releasing identity from the past. Both men are haunted by memory. Both wonder, can I still serve after failure? That is a universal spiritual question. The ego says, your mistakes define you. Spirit says, what is real in you remains untouched. The institution of the church itself becomes symbolic of the ego's dual nature. On one level, tradition, beauty, devotion, shared longing for God. On another, hierarchy, fear, power, image management, control. Often points to this tension. Forms can either extend love or reinforce separation depending on the purpose given them. The film never fully resolves this tension. That is part of its integrity. Even spiritual systems can become defenses against direct encounter, yet they can also become classrooms for forgiveness. The conversations between the two men increasingly resemble what ACIM calls a holy relationship, a relationship repurposed for awakening, rather than self-reinforcement. At first, they see each other as opposites: conservative liberal, traditional progressive, rigid/open. But slowly the categories soften, and underneath ideology, they begin meeting in shared vulnerability. That is where healing enters, not through agreement. through defenselessness. One of the most powerful undercurrents in the movie is the dismantling of spiritual specialness. The ego wants spiritual authority to confirm superiority. I know. I represent truth. I am chosen. Yet the more genuine the connection becomes, the less either man appears certain of himself. And strangely, that uncertainty feels more alive than dogmatic confidence. Very. Because the Course does not ultimately lead toward grandiosity, it leads toward availability, toward listening, toward relinquishing the need to be the author of reality. By the end, the film feels less concerned with religion itself and more concerned with whether human beings can move beyond defended identity long enough to truly encounter one another, not as roles, not as ideologies, not as symbols, but as frightened and luminous minds learning, however imperfectly, to forgive themselves and each other.